Welcome back. We're on part two of extinguishing divorce. Our goal is a 0% divorce rate, especially in your life. Now, we were at the point where we were talking about being single again. And for many people, they're married for a long time, their marriage doesn't seem so great to them. And they just think, oh boy, if I could just be single again, how great that would be. But being single again isn't all it's cracked up to be. They've built up this straw man in their minds that doesn't hold water. And you've heard the phrase, don't kiss me like we're married, kiss me like we're lovers. So they're wanting some type of sensation. I think we heard from Sue Johnson earlier in the semester that monogamy is the most exciting, the most sexually titillating form of marriage. And so to think that you can find better sex or whatever you're looking for outside of marriage is just incorrect. Now, people who are newly divorced are often looking forward to playing the field. That is go out and find new partners. The boredom of married life then gives way to being single again. However, let there be a fair warning to those who think in this way. Being single again isn't all it's cracked up to be. What these people do not anticipate, and what many experienced people of single life have discovered, is the following. Life is a challenge due to the fear of rejection. You may have been rejected a few times and you have to live with that. Fear of AIDS and other STDs. You don't know these people, where they've been. Learning about and adjusting to a new person's idiosyncrasies. People, especially the older they get, and if you're going to be married a second time, you have idiosyncrasies. So does your new spouse, and habits, lifelong habits, and you have baggage, and so do they. And then you have a struggle to trust again. Your other spouse may have let you down, may have dishonored your trust, and now you're struggling to trust again. Marrying again does not solve that problem. Many people find themselves longing for the very stability they left behind. Also, another pitfall of divorce is that divorce hurts children of all ages, even adult children. So here's a law, if you will, Easterling's law of divorce. Easterling's law of divorce. Couples don't divorce, families divorce. You may think in your mind, your little mind, you're thinking it's just between me and my wife, me and my husband. That's it. It's our business. Nobody else's business what we do. Yeah, I beg to differ. Children lose their family. You're losing a spouse, maybe someone you don't really like that much, but your children are losing their mother or father. They're losing their family unit. And so divorce is not just between the husband and wife. What once was the basis of the children's very security and protection no longer exists. When parent moves away, instant rejection. The child always feels that it's their fault. The child always feels it was my fault that they divorced. I know it's irrational. You know it's irrational. The child does not know that. A child is a child. If I had just been a better child, my parents would have loved each other more. Children have all kinds of crazy ideas about this. And so the child feels rejected. If you just rejected the parent, oh, honey, I still love you. It's just your father who's a problem to me, not you. You can say that all you want, but you're rejecting a part of that child. It's that child's father. One parent moves away, instant rejection. Not intended, not saying it's that these are evil people, but the hurt is there. The hurt is there. Sometimes siblings even get split up. You ask them whether you want to go with mommy or daddy sometimes, or whatever, but they get split up sometimes. Some family members take sides. You know, the in-laws, of course, and so on. But even just other family members, they'll tell, I believe Dad. I want to go with Dad. Divorce is forever. You may come back and get married again, but the damage is done. It's like hammering, the little boy was hammering nails in the door of his closet. His mom came in and found her doing it. Why are you doing that? I don't know, I'm just doing it. So she made him pull the nails and paint over the door, but those holes were still there. The damage was still there. And she wanted him to see that, even long afterwards, that even though you may make up for it, you may try to repair it, the damage was still done. And so we find that death is easier for children to accept than divorce. They understand about death. Someone died, grandma went to heaven, you know, that sort of thing. But to understand divorce is difficult for them. They just don't get it. So here's our $64,000 question. Should couples stay together for the sake of the kids? The Easterling answer is, of course. Brutal marriages may be bad for children, but boring marriages are not bad for children. By brutal, I mean if there's actually physical abuse, sexual abuse, wife battering, of course you have to move out. You owe it to your family. You owe it to your children to get out of that marriage. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about ordinary marriages where there's disagreements, where there's arguing and so on. But boring marriages, that's no reason to divorce. So the couple should stay together for the sake of the kids. By all means, you should do everything you can to make your marriage work. Go to a counselor, read books on marriage, read the Bible, for goodness sakes. Do whatever you can, but talk to your pastor, talk to your counselor. Go to a marriage counselor. Do what you can to save your marriage. So your children's lives will not be adversely affected by conflict or divorce. You owe it to your children to have a happy marriage. You should love your spouse because it's good for your children. Now, I can't love him. He's unlovable. No, you can love him if you want to. You can't roller skate on a buffalo herd, but you can be happy if you have a mind to. Happiness is a choice, and to love someone is a choice. It's an act. Love is not something you have or you don't have. Love is something you choose to do. So be affectionate to your spouse. This is the person you swore before God and these witnesses to love, honor, and cherish all your days. Be affectionate to that person. Nothing puts love deep into the heart of a little child more than knowing that mom and dad are deeply in love with each other. So there are some illusions leading to disillusions. Illusions leading to disillusionment. That's how my parents were. Yes, I know that's our model, is how our parents were. But this sets you up for unmet expectations. Her dad served her mom breakfast in bed. Wow. So she expects something like that? His dad always had his breakfast served by the mother, not in bed, of course, but you know, she did all the cooking and so on. So that's why you need to get your expectors lined up with one another, get premarital counseling. And so children are like sponges, soaking up what they observe their parents doing. Then they live that out when they become parents. Just the way your parents' marriage was, that's in your mind. The way parenting is, it's the way marriage is. And it's not necessarily so. Open your mind, read books, go to counseling, get some better ideas of marriage than just your parents. Your parents may have had a great marriage, but they may not have. And most children, their parents don't have great marriages like we're talking about in this class. So educate yourself about how to do that. Also, look at the media. Don't look at the media marriages. They're entertaining, but they're not informing them. They're not models for you to base your marriage on. They're shallow, exaggerated, and they're just full of caricatures, like the gruff man and so on. It's just really ridiculous. So you need to identify your marital misconceptions. Whatever your misconceptions are, discard them, throw them away, and don't throw your spouse away. I thought it was going to be this way and it's not. Well, get over it. It's not that way. Now, you become the spouse that your husband or your wife would like to have. That will improve your marriage. Then you'll see change begin in them. Or some people say it's too late to change. That's an illusion. It's never too late. Never too late to change. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States, said this: some people see things as they are and ask why. Others see things as they could be and ask why not? Why can't I have a great marriage? The answer is you can. Come on, people, educate yourself, change your behavior, and you can change the way your spouse feels about you. Your spouse's faults do not have to be permanent. For example, your spouse becomes angry when you talk about finances. But when you talk about other things, the spouse doesn't become angry. So there's something about, maybe there's something about you and the way you talk about finances that triggers something in your spouse that makes the spouse angry. Maybe if you approached it differently. Maybe if you started using I statements instead of you statements, accusatory statements, blaming statements. Stop that. Basta, quit it, halt, and start using I statements. I feel this way about it. And don't just trigger your spouse. Also, your husband doesn't get angry when talking about finances with other people. It's only you. So there's something about you and the way you talk about finances. It's not finances. That's not the problem. It's the way you talk about it. It's the way you approach it. You see, it's not always your spouse who is the problem. So this is it. So there's the Pygmalion effect. Because you expect someone to behave a certain way, then he or she does. So this is our actions toward others, impact others people's beliefs about us. It causes their action, that causes them to act in a certain way toward us, which reinforces our beliefs about ourselves and them. That influences our actions toward the other, and then impacts their beliefs about us and so on. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. When my husband talks to me about finances, he gets angry. And you believe that. I mean, you really believe that. But you got to change that somewhere. And maybe it's your behavior that needs to be changed in some way. So do some self-reflection. Here's another illusion. My husband just can't communicate. This is the number one complaint of wives against their husbands. Conversation is a way of achieving things for women, such as intimacy, a way of getting close or connecting. For men, doing things together is a means of connecting. It's not conversation so much. Men aren't into conversation as a way of connecting. They like to do things together. Hey, let's go bowling. Let's go to the shooting range. Okay, let's go hunting or fishing or go to the car races. Let's do something. But for women, it's largely conversation. So the men need to learn to communicate better, learn to do active listening, reflective listening, and to really do listening to your spouse and giving feedback on what you think you feel her saying. And women, maybe you should do things with your husband. Get out there and participate with him. So there are some things you can do that help you communicate better. Men talk about business, sports, cars, politics, that sort of thing. A lot of women find some of these things interesting, and there are different women who have different interests. My wife is a big NBA fan, loves basketball. She knows all the players on every team and so on. But for the most part, most women find sports boring or business is boring and so on, cars especially. So what? But, here's a clue. You should make what is important to your spouse as important to you as your spouse is to you. You should make what is important to your spouse as important to you as your spouse is to you. I'm not interested in that. Well, get interested in it. I don't care about baseball. Well, care about baseball. If you care about your spouse, start caring about baseball. Well, I don't care about the things she likes. Well, start caring about things she likes. Okay? Get some things in common. You can do this. It really will make a huge difference. So women like to talk about the problem, whatever the problem is. And it's cathartic for them. It's healing to talk about it. But that sort of discussion causes men to withdraw. They feel uncomfortable in a touchy-feely conversation. So they withdraw. They pull back. They do what I call the back-off boogaloo. And when men back off, women see that as rejection. He's rejecting me, and they feel depressed about it. So women say they want to feel understood, and they treasure talking about problems. It really makes her feel understood if you will talk about problems with her. Men, though, feel the need to fix things. So if you got a problem, don't talk about it, fix it. That's the man's attitude. So I'm kind of that way myself, but really it's cathartic and healing for women to talk about the problems. And sometimes that fixes the problem. Just talking about it, you'll find a solution. How are you going to find a solution if you don't talk about it? But when men say something like this, don't talk about it, just fix it. So it sounds to the women like, so do something about it, rather than what the woman wants to hear, which is, I think I know what you mean. I think I kind of know how you feel about it. That's so much better to a woman than, so just fix your problem. You know, it's so unfeeling and uncaring to them. Then he withdraws again. So it's that relationship dance again that we talked about. So for men, actions speak louder than words. So sharing their feelings is low priority. In a study of preschool children, believe it or not, they found that girls spent the majority of their time talking with each other. Boys spent their time making guttural sounds that sound like trucks, cars, animals, or guns. So there's a big difference. Here's another illusion. My wife nags all the time. In the first place, she probably doesn't nag all the time. That's a generalization. Don't make generalizations. But frequently when women make requests of their husbands, they're actually trying to get a response, an emotional closeness that they treasure. A man usually experiences his wife's request as a personal attack. He wants to avoid feeling that he has to take orders from anyone. Men feel like they're the boss. They're in control. Nobody's my boss. So he might wait a while before doing what she requests. Fix the faucet, fix the toilet. So he'll wait a while. This lets him think later that he's doing it of his own free will, not because she told him to. It's this way he has a satisfaction. I did it when I wanted to do it. Yeah, it needed to be done, but I didn't do it because she told me to. I did it because it needed to be done, and I did it in my own way, in my own time. I'm sorry, that's just the way men tend to be. If she's impatient about it and reminds him several times, he calls it nagging, which is what that is, and he puts it off even longer. So if you want to get your husband to do something, don't remind him constantly about it. Back off. You told him once, and he'll do it in his own sweet time. If he doesn't, then you need to have a conversation about it, a sweet, loving conversation about it, not negative tracking and that sort of thing. So here's a real life example. Mary wanted to spend more time with Tom. But instead of saying, I miss you since we haven't been spending time with each other lately, let's get tickets for the theater Saturday night or plan something fun to do. I'll arrange for a babysitter. Instead of that, what she actually said was, you're never around anymore, Tom. You don't spend time with me or the kids. Work is more important to you. You don't even notice me anymore. Well, now to Tom, that sounds like an attack instead of a beautiful invitation like that first alternative. So what did Tom do? He launches a counterattack because he's defensive. He leaves her feeling even more hurt and rejected, and he's less likely to take her out to do anything. And there you are. But now men should worry when their wives stop complaining. That means they're not vying for closeness. If men could learn to properly interpret what they think is nagging, but it's really a vie, it's an attempt at intimacy. They're calling for intimacy when they say things like, you don't communicate anymore. You don't do things any, that sort of, you don't talk to me. That sort of thing is a request. It doesn't sound like it. It sounds like nagging. It sounds like an attack. But really, it's a request for intimacy. So men need to learn how their wives talk and interpret it correctly. But after a while, the wife will stop pursuing him. They'll live isolated, parallel lives from each other, and their marriage persona will be more like the couple that is unconnected and apart from each other. Here's a picture of a boat for sale by the owner's wife. That's not a good picture. Now, there are some more illusions. My spouse had an affair, so the marriage can't work. Well, that's a big one. Jesus even said adultery is an excuse for divorce. You can get a divorce for adultery if you want. And it's true that there is a great deal of devastation and shock. And it's really devastating to find that your spouse has been unfaithful. And infidelity leads naturally to feelings of betrayal, mistrust, anger, hurt. Wow, it's just horrible. And people say things like, I don't trust you anymore. How can we stay married? Good question, actually. And Jesus actually said not to divorce unless adultery is involved. In this case, we are talking about adultery. So, but even then, you can still forgive. There are famous cases we've seen in the news of family members forgiving someone for murdering their own relative, their own spouse, their son or daughter, or husband. Amazing how great forgiveness can be. So maybe you can work through this, even adultery in your marriage. Seek counseling, work it out if you like. Go ahead and work it out. Divorce is not commanded. In Malachi, God said, I hate divorce. And sometimes the marriage is stronger after the divorce, because after the affair, not after the divorce, but after the affair than before, because they really are working now at making their marriage strong. Here's another illusion. I don't love him or her anymore. And that's like you fall in love. Well, you fall in love. You can fall into a manhole. So love is not like that. The magic is gone. That sort of thing. We just fell out of love. And people who talk about falling out of love seem to be longing for romantic love, infatuation from some former time when they were in junior high or something. But there's a different kind of love. Companionate love is a more mature love. Ecstasy is replaced with a calm. Instead of being prized for the comfort level, it's scorned for the emptiness it supposedly creates. Okay? So the fire of an affair eventually dies out. So you may have an affair with someone outside your marriage. And then what happens? After a while, that fire goes out and you'll wish you hadn't done it. You wish you had been true to your spouse who was true to you. And now you're a dirty rat. So you wish you had stayed with your original partner. So don't do an affair. Don't do that. But you don't hear people saying, well, I fell out of love with my children. Do you love your children? Not. Yes, you do. Well, how could you fall out of love with your spouse, the person you swore before God and these witnesses to love, honor, and cherish? So you get out of it what you put into it. It's not 50-50, it's 100%, 100%. You can't roller skate in a buffalo herd, but you can be happy if you've a mind to. It's a choice. So the rabbits and foxes, this just shows that in Canada, when the rabbit population gets higher, the fox population goes up. But then as the foxes eat more rabbits, they prosper and so on. But then there are fewer rabbits. When there are fewer rabbits to eat, the fox population decreases and so on. And so the point is, you can't understand the woman's behavior unless you also see the man's behavior. So when you go to a marriage counselor, you need to have both present. This counselor needs to get both stories, or at least talk to each of them separately or something and get the full story. It's very poor practice for a marital counselor to hear one person and give good marital counsel. because you don't have the full story. You hear one side only. So a wife's behavior may seem as mysterious as the unexplained rise and fall of the rabbit population until viewed together with her husband's actions. Aha, then it makes sense. So each person's behavior is a response to an action or event which preceded it. So every action has a reaction, and it's a trigger for what follows. So you can't blame anyone for any of this stuff in the marriage. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Spouses function like a system. It's not he's acting and she's acting, he's at fault and she's innocent. They both are acting in tandem. Usually there's some dependency, codependency happening there. Families operate like a system as well. So praising your mate for desirable behavior will increase the behavior, but failing to notice good deeds will reduce the likelihood of that person's performing the good deeds. It's Pavlov's dog theory, isn't it? It's simple behaviorism, and it works well. Constantly ignoring a child's temper tantrums will reduce the frequency, whereas threatening and punishing will increase them. How should you handle a temper tantrum by a child? Stomping on the floor, screaming and throwing themselves down and so on? Ignore it. When they learn that they won't get any attention that way, they'll stop it. So most of our thoughts and perceptions are at the unconscious level. Our feelings, that's the area of our feelings, our fears, irrational thoughts, and so on. The preconscious levels are memories and our stored knowledge. We can access them at times, but our thoughts and perceptions are above the level. It's like an iceberg. This is the iceberg theory, that we need to, most of our problems are below the surface, and we need to go to psychoanalytical counseling to find out what our shameful experiences are, our violent motives, what's deep within us that is the problem. And so it's some undissolved childhood trauma. But the fact is, focusing on the past is unnecessary. Identifying past causes for current problems results in blame and bitterness. So the more responsibility this person accepts for something, the less person B does. So the more you do of something, finances, housework, childcare, spiritual duties, the less your spouse does. So you have one active partner, as we saw, and then you have another partner who may be just there and just tagging along. One partner runs the whole household. So this is the butterfly effect. Edward Lorenz said that a butterfly flapping its wings in Brazil could set in motion a series of events culminating with a tornado in Texas. So if you begin to do small things, accepting things, listening to your spouse, trying to treasure your spouse, loving your spouse, pay attention to the love languages, and those, then you can eventually set in motion a positive series of events in your family, and you'll have a positive family instead of a negative one. Even those small things make a lot of difference. Small but significant changes can turn things around dramatically. Have a happy day.